have listeners. There's just too many tellers.
Hey, y'all. Well, my story is a little bit different. It's taken from my life, but it's also not about me. We were sitting in the kitchen. She had just made a fresh pot of hot coffee. And as we sat down to drink the coffee, a gentle breeze blew across the kitchen, and he came in and sat down in the living room in his favorite chair. We began talking, and I said, "Tell me your story." Immediately her cheeks began to blush, and she got a wonderful sparkle in her eyes. "Ah, you don't want to hear that old story again." I said, "You know I do. I love your story." So she began talking. He got up out of his chair and came to the kitchen. She got up and poured him a cup of coffee. No, tea in Canada. Anyways, when he sat down at the table with us, I knew I was in for the treat of a lifetime. In tandem, they began to tell the story. And this is their story. It happened a long time ago. It could be a once upon a time story, except it's very true. She was so young. She was working in her mother's kitchen, and she heard a knock at the door. It was unusual for someone to knock, and so she timidly opened the door. And there stood a vision. She stood and stared for a moment from his boots, which were laced in a special manner. He had woolen socks pulled up and tied with a red ribbon at each side of his leg. He had breeches on and a red plaid shirt. He had a toque upon his head, and his red hair tumbled from beneath it. She looked at his face, and there was the most beautiful blue eyes and a gentle smile across his face. Wow, she looked again, and there, hanging from his hip, was a very large cat. It was a lumberjack. A very good-looking lumberjack at that. He, in turn, when the wind blew the door open and he'd walked in, he spied a vision. He was so taken back. Her long flaxen golden hair hung to her waist, and as the breeze blew, it brushed across her blushing cheeks, and he noticed two of the most beautiful, sparkling blue eyes that God had ever made. They couldn't remember what the first words they had said to each other, but they began talking, and she got him a dipper of cold water. He drank the water slowly and watched this vision as she moved around the kitchen. He went back out to work in the farm. He was there helping for the summer work. He made many excuses to go back to the kitchen, and she waited anxiously to see him again. He finally went back to work in the woods, but as he went back, a small voice kept telling him, "She's the one. She's the one. You must wait for her." And although time went by, his mind wandered back to the flaxen-haired girl on the farm. And a small voice would again tell him, "She's the one. You must wait to marry her." Well, she knew and he knew that she was very, very young, and so it was just a dream that went over and over in their minds. Time passed and years rolled by. before he went back to see the farm. When he saw her, she was grown and she was a beautiful young woman. And he was still a fine-looking lumberjack. It seemed like no time had passed as they spoke, and they began to talk as if they had always known each other forever. It wasn't long until their discussions they realized that they were in love. They approached her mother. Her mother wasn't too happy, but she agreed for them to get married. You see, her mother knew lumberjacks, but she thought, well, they were in love, she would give it a chance. When they were married, they moved and they were on their own, and the young couple wished for a family. No family came. And you know, she'd hear the hushed whispers when she would go into town. There she is. She's never gonna give birth. And she would go home and she would feel so unhappy and sad. But guess what? Boy, did they fool the world. They had many children to warm their heart and fill their home. The young sweethearts shared almost 60 years together. They weathered the storms of life, the grief and the sadness, and the mountaintops of joy and laughter. Ah, yes, I knew them well. They became my father-in-law and mother-in-law, and two of my finest friends. Thank you all.